Eric Fries is a graduate from BYU, and I think his career and achievements are what we all hope an undergraduate and a master's education at BYU could possibly lead to. He earned his PhD in fiction from Ohio University, and he currently teaches at Wabash College in Indiana, instructing writing courses that span from topics of travel to screenplay to video game writing. He writes both fiction and creative nonfiction and has published 4 novels, 2 short story collections, Dominant Traits and Invisible Men, and 2 collections of essays, Hemingway on a Bike, and his most recent novel, French Dive, Living More with Less in the South of France. His stories, essays, and translations appear in numerous periodicals, including the Southern Review, Boston Review, and Harvard Review. After reading his most recent collection of essays, French Dive, I felt transported. His careful words and unexpected descriptions brought me to the antique markets to buy economical furniture, the waters in which he dives, and tracking down a tourist through a lost GoPro camera. To be brought in so close felt like a gift. From the first essay, I was delighted by his descriptions and language. I would have never thought to describe the way a 1-year toddles as an awkward ninja turtle, but now it seems like the only fitting description. Throughout these essays, it felt intimate and friendly and safe to have Fries teach me how to dive through the stories he tells. I felt like his son Dio, learning how to spot an octopus, encouraging me to keep looking long enough to see it transform from a rock to a living creature, to keep my head straight, breathe through the tube, and kick my feet. In his collection, diving is meditation and contemplation, and he invites us all to take a deep breath and dive. Please join me in welcoming Eric Fries.
Oh, thanks so much. And thanks for the wonderful introduction. Thanks for the English department for having me again. I really love coming to BYU and seeing this program develop and seeing so many of you here. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the book and then read actually the chapter that was referred to in the introduction about finding a GoPro. This book is a book that is really was really a challenge for me to write. I'm mostly a writer of short things, and so this is my first time trying to write a longer thing, and it's I think successful at recreating our experience. I wanted something that would talk about not only this experience of moving my family to France and renovating a small apartment there, but also trying to integrate ourselves into a community that was a lot more diverse, and trying to live in this community in a way that I thought was more in line with our core values. I have 4 kids, and we bought a tiny apartment, about 700 square feet. Jim Gaffigan a few years ago published a book called Dad is Fat that is about like him living in a tiny apartment in New York City with 4 kids and all the craziness that kind of comes from that experience. And that was kind of what we did, and we renovated the apartment with our 4 children underfoot for a year. So this details our experiences living there, of raising our children bilingually, and trying to live in a community in a way that is respectful to the culture, and also that enabled our family to grow. Okay, so the chapter I'm going to read is called Mystery Girl. In the spring, many Mediterranean fish species spawn, creating long strings of eggs that fill the Baie des Anges. Every time I fished, I navigated through these giant translucent tentacles. If I looked closely, I could sometimes see the fledgling fish start to develop in their own tiny membrane. The water was warming up. After school now, we resumed our habit of changing and going to the beach. I was spending so much time in the water, I felt like I was growing gills. Every day that the temperatures were high enough and the sun was out, our family trekked with bags of arm floaties and snorkeling equipment and snacks through the sunbathers, past the private beach, till we found a spot on the easternmost corner of Castell Beach. We repeated the activity so many times that each one of our kids had their own routine. Zari liked to jump off the rocks, counting with her fingers, 1, 2, 3, before hopping into the chilly water with one hand plugging her nose. Dio walked among the plastic debris that had washed up, looking for busted fishing lures, decapitated dolls, or bottle caps. Inga decided to follow her father and don a mask and snorkel in Zari's fins. The fins were laughably oversized, but we cinched them up so that they only occasionally fell off. Every time she saw a fish, she talked through her snorkel, a high hollow sound like the underwater communications of a whale. Our youngest, Ivy, bobbed in the water with her orange arm floaties and shorty wetsuit like a multicolored cork. Often I would join my children, then head out with my wetsuit on little solo dives to practice holding my breath. The area was rich in marine life, as well as junk from human activity. I could spend more than 3 minutes under the water now, plenty of time to assess pollution on the seafloor or chase schools of soap. Sometimes I would pick out plastic bottles or submerged shoes and bring them topside to throw them away, my own undersea Boy Scout cleanup. And sometimes I found treasures of my own. The first time I found anything worth keeping was while I was spearfishing on the other side of the rocks, underneath the imposing Monument des Morts war memorial. Something white flowed with the current like an unfurled flag. I picked it up and brought it to the surface. It was an OJC Nice handball t-shirt with logos from local sponsors and the coat of arms of several cities. Nice, the Ville d'Isola, the town where we'd been skiing just a couple months previous, and Saint-Étienne-de-Tinée. I took it home and laundered it, and now wore it on occasion to give me some local clout. I found other clothes on the seafloor that always miraculously fit. A pair of Levi's 501s, which I was going to try and wear today, but they're actually starting to get pretty old. A multicolored board shorts, a cable knit wool sweater. Once I bumped into a friend of mine on the way to the beach, and I said, "Everything I'm wearing now I found on the bottom of the sea." He said, "You're really into this, aren't you?" I found goggles, snorkel masks, a watch, several wallets, a pair of Ray-Bans, and enough fishing lures to fill a tackle box. On a normal after-school afternoon, my kids splashed in the shallows while I took a brisk swim to the edge of the rocks. A few days earlier, I had seen a magnificent Meru, proof that France's anti-fishing laws were working. It was guarding the passage between the rocks and the open sea, about 60 feet deep. I purged my lungs and gulped some extra oxygen before diving down. It was there again, its russet body peppered with white and yellow, its fins ringed with light blue. It fled into a hole, and I skirted the rocks. Striped sar fled before my bright body. Whiskered rouget fanned out on the seafloor, darting away and then coming to rest again. I skimmed the sand till they gave way to pebbles, then rocks, all the contours modeled and natural. Now a black line bisected the coral-encrusted rocks, a baton like a billy club attached to a square silver casing. I grasped the foam handle and ascended to the surface. It was a GoPro camera. I had seen videos online of GoPros before, but my short stint, besides my short stint filming with house hunters, I had limited personal experience with them. What most impressed me about the device was its compactness. It was about the size of a box of matches with 2 buttons and a square protuberance for the lens. The plastic housing kept the camera sealed and protected from the pressure of being under 50 feet of water. It looked small and solid, an electronic marvel, like a tiny brick. I beached myself and pushed myself backwards up the rocks by my fins. "Look what I found," I said. My children and Rixa crowded around. "Do you think it works?" I pressed the front button and a slit of red light began flashing, almost out of batteries. It recorded a couple seconds, then automatically shut off. "We'll have to keep recharging it." I kept thinking that someone around us would see me walking with the camera on a selfie stick and approach me, relieved. "You found it. I thought we'd never get it back." But nobody came. I packed the camera home and read up online how to charge it. A standard USB charger, same size as our Nikon DSLR. Done. In a few minutes, I had enough battery power to get the thing operational. It was a GoPro Hero 4, top of the line. With the selfie stick and the waterproof housing, it would cost around $600. It was the kind of expensive toy that I would never buy for myself, but that I could find plenty of ways to use. We could film our children learning to swim, or document some of my deeper dives. But then I felt the sting of guilt. This expensive toy belonged to someone else, not me. As I pressed the buttons on the camera and watched the tiny icons flash to life, I started on the path to finding its rightful owner. I opened the oldest video first. An Asian woman in her 20s, the GoPro's wide-angle lens keeping her oval face and the eaves of her tiny apartment in focus. She was on the top floor. Only the middle meter or so of the apartment was tall enough to stand up in. The rest of it swooped to either side with a bed tucked in the corner and a kitchenette wedged next to a dormer window. The camera swung around. The woman wore earbuds while she swiped at her smartphone with her free hand. She panned past a low square table to a flat-screen TV and a window looking out into the dark. The next video caught the mystery woman from the side. In profile, she was maybe older than I originally thought. Her hair was the color of straw on top, with a darker layer underneath, impossibly white-framed sunglasses perched on her head. The image shifted to terracotta hexagonal tiles set into descending stairs. She took a tentative step, then another. The image panned back to her profile, her face never shifting from the rectangular smartphone gripped in her other hand. She pursed her lips for a kiss. Now we're at the front door, opening to full Mediterranean sun. The video properties were time-stamped at Tuesday afternoon, 1:30 p.m., just 2 days before I found the GoPro on the bottom of the sea. She was in the port neighborhood, on the other side of the chateau. She walked along the port, past the multi-million-dollar yachts and the dock of the Corsica ferry. She passed the jetty of concrete blocks leading out to a lighthouse. Now she rounded the cornice. She turned the camera to look down at the rocks. They were the same rocks where I went spearfishing that day, at that very time, down to the minute. I recognized the two guys sitting on a flat rock behind where I glided into the water. One was bald and wrinkled like the head of a turtle. White sunblock lined his nose. The other guy was hairy with a beard, burned as dark bronze as the first, despite the hair. I looked for evidence of my spearfishing. But from the angle, rocks blocked my view. No snorkel or disturbance revealed my presence. Maybe I was further out, beyond the frame, holding my breath and waiting for a hapless dorade. The next 3 videos chronicled her walk to the beach, the descent down the stairs, lying out on her beach towel, listening to music. Almost every shot was of herself, watching her projection onto her smartphone. She had used the GoPro merely to document her quotidian activities. This is me getting up. This is me leaving my apartment. This is me walking to the beach. She chronicled her life like the Lumiere brothers, who thought that moving pictures would be a passing fad as people ran out of subjects to record. The next few videos were interesting for how they began to construct the narrative behind how the GoPro ended up on the bottom of the sea. It was Tuesday evening now, back at the apartment. Mystery Girl decided she wanted a better view. First, a shot of her face. Then the camera panned to an open window that grew until it filled the frame. The frame shook and tilted to show sloping orange roof tiles. Her feet clacked as she stepped out. One hand balanced on the spine of the roof, and the other kept the GoPro aloft to show her descent. Soon we were at the final dormer before the roof dropped over 100 feet to the street. The port was lit up, the white yachts bathed in light from the street lamps. One false step could send her flying off the roof and down to the street below. So Mystery Girl didn't always value her personal safety. It was a GoPro after all, a device designed for thrill seekers. The next videos were of Castell Beach again, this time at our favorite spot, the easternmost section next to the rocks. She waded in and plopped the GoPro underwater. When it surfaced, it tilted up to the old terrace where two French men sat in cheap collapsible chairs. Then one of them waved. Finally, our first dialogue. Mystery Girl flirted with the two men on the terrace. They looked about her age, early to mid-20s, bronze from many afternoons like this one, sitting shirtless in sunglasses, fleecing naive tourists. One had a shaved head and a short goatee. The other was wiry, with a flat-billed bull's cap turned backwards. They mumbled in French to each other. "What's he saying?" Mystery Girl asked. Her voice was playful, inflected with Australian diphthongs. Shaved Head laughed. "He says you have a nice butt." "Ah, merci," the girl said. The next videos set up the GoPro's demise. Here was the girl swimming on a rubber raft. Here were the boys jumping off the rocks. Here was the girl trying to film the guys swimming. The frame was shaky while the girl swam, and then it stopped, evened out, became one fluid shot of deep water. A green rock emerged from the blue till it filled the frame. The camera bumped on the rock, flipped around, and landed with the lens facing up. And then came the most beautiful shot of Mystery Girl's videos. A long static shot of a faraway sun filtered through about 50 feet of water. 2-inch-long black castanyoles flitted in front of the frame, probably drawn to the GoPro's shiny casing, the blinking red recording light. It was calm, serene, like an aquarium screensaver. After about 15 minutes of footage, the camera shut off. I watched these last videos over and over again, looking for clues that might help me locate Mystery Girl. Part of me felt like I was reconstructing a crime. The guys were hitting on her. They came there regularly, probably lured her in like so many other unsuspecting young women on solo vacations. While they were swimming, it was hard to discern exactly what was happening. Most of the video showed the underside of a plastic dinghy that they used for flotation, and then the occasional shot of either Mystery Girl or the bald guys thrashing limbs. The girl said, "I'm only here 3 days." And the guy said, "We all happy in Nice. You stay with us. You so much happy." At one point, the guy wrapped his arm around her waist. Were they fooling around? The halter top she was wearing was gone. Maybe she was fighting them off. Finding the girl became more urgent. I canvassed the mind of the internet, Facebook, close family and friends. I didn't reveal my concerns about what may have happened to Mystery Girl, except to Rixa, who told me that I was overreacting. "They're just swimming," she said. "She's half naked." Lots of women take their tops off in France. Don't you think it's weird that nobody dives down to get the GoPro? You'd think they'd try to help her find it if she dropped it. It was probably too deep. Most people can't dive down that far. But something about the video didn't sit right with me. Friends started posting suggestions on Facebook for how to contact her. If she downloaded any video, you could find a digital signature. Maybe Google face recognition? My brother Kent told me about a guy in New York who had his phone stolen, and then someone started uploading content to his iCloud. He tracked the phone to China, to a guy who had bought the phone from an online vendor. They entered into a correspondence and arranged to meet. Meanwhile, the story of their contact went viral, and when he came to China, people recognized him on the plane. A crowd showed up at the airport. He got a bouquet of flowers on television and millions of followers on Twitter. "Maybe that could be you," Kent said. No, my story was more sinister. There could be confidentiality issues, identities to be protected. I could be witness to a crime. I almost expected someone to show up on my doorstep, demanding the footage. They'd been waiting for someone to retrieve the GoPro and its selfie stick from the bottom of the sea, watching the spot from noon to night, and now they had tracked me to my home. You don't know what you have, they'd say. My friend Damien, who runs a vacation rental business, suggested trying to find the apartment online. I knew the approximate address. I told him that the woman looked Chinese, but sounded like she was from Australia. Try Airbnb, he said. It's really popular with Anglophones. I checked, using the map view to see if any rentals showed up. The apartment was quite distinct, with its dormers and sloping roofline, easy to recognize if I had a few photos. A couple clicks, and I found it. A one-bedroom rooftop studio in the Port neighborhood. I clicked on the apartment, and a list of renters showed up. Each left glowing commentary. Perfect location. Charlie was so accommodating. Make sure you pack light. There are a lot of stairs. The most recent one had a dime-sized icon of a blonde Chinese woman. The site listed her first name as Chen from Shanghai. The room was amazing, she said. Nice view and super clean. Love it. Huh. Mystery Girl was no longer a mystery. I phoned the owner, Charlie, and explained about the GoPro. He was confused at first. Was I a friend of Chen's? How did I come by it again? Eventually he understood, but he was stupefied by how easily I found the apartment and was able to track her down. You're very nice to be doing this, he said. She had already returned to Shanghai, but he would email her with my contact information and let her know what I found. What a coincidence she was from Shanghai, Kent told me. The day before I found the GoPro, we had been talking about China, a country that he studies extensively as a political science professor. The college where I teach has a summer program in Shanghai, and a colleague of mine had recently posted enviable photos about the food and culture. A Buddhist temple with a peaked roof, basted meat kebabs, space-age-looking skyscrapers, and a multinational pickup ultimate frisbee team. But Kent was dismissive. Westerners love Shanghai, but it drives me crazy, he said. So materialistic, very consumer-driven, a feeling of superiority to the rest of China. He also cited personal experiences, the teenage girls who tried to sell themselves like door-to-door salespeople, the selfless reciprocity. In Kent's mind, it was a city with too much new money, full of people who only cared about Prada, smartphones, and sports cars. Like the Chinese version of the Côte d'Azur. She probably won't even care if she lost it, he said. I wouldn't be surprised if she hasn't bought another one by now. And yet, I was still apprehensive about Mystery Girl, wondering after her well-being. The ambiguity surrounding the GoPro's loss had created a narrative that was difficult to dismiss. Mystery Girl was in trouble. Sure, she seemed a little daft and materialistic, but I wasn't willing to condemn her for her choices. In my brother's mind, the GoPro merely confirmed his impression of privileged young people from Shanghai. Go ahead and keep it, he told me. Don't give it a second thought. I still half expected an email from Mystery Girl. I had watched her videos when no one else had, sat in front of my computer and thought about who she was. I wanted to understand her, to show her here was someone different, a father with 4 kids who dove among the rocks to clean up trash from the bottom of the sea. I was trying to return something, not just the GoPro, but her belief in men who only wanted the best for her. But no email came. After a few days, friends asked, "Whatever happened to Mystery Girl? You ever hear from her?" When I told them no, they speculated about why. Maybe the Airbnb guy never emailed her. I followed up and he said that he had. Maybe she was traveling again? Possible. She might not know where I should send it. Or maybe something did happen in the footage that I had found, something that she would prefer to forget. Rixa has since made a compilation of the videos constructed to show Mystery Girl's 3-day trip to the Côte d'Azur and the GoPro's eventual demise. Zari narrates the movie. They swam in the clear blue sea. They splashed and played, and then they swam some more until, dun dun dun, Mystery Girl dropped her camera. It fell to the sea floor, bounced off a rock, and landed facing the sun. I've given up on Mystery Girl. Her comments on Airbnb have diffused the power of my narrative. She wasn't assaulted, didn't experience humiliation or aggression. She's alive and well, giving 5 stars to her experience. Best location ever. The story becomes an oddity, a joke. At the end of the video compilation, my daughter says, "The fish swam by, minding their own business, until one day, Papa dove down and found a camera." The last image in the compilation is my own. The first of many since then, after I hauled the GoPro to shore with the batteries running out. I sit on the beach with the sun at my back, casting a shadow. I hold the GoPro triumphant with discovery, like my children searching the rocks for a severed doll's head, a watch strap, half of a gauzy net. My shadow arms rise. Clear water laps at my flippered feet. I have tried to learn about Mystery Girl, have wasted countless hours reaching across our time zones, across the digital landscapes, to break down the barriers of our difference. I want to ask her, "Are you okay? Would you like me to send you what you have lost? Please let me render you this service." But instead, I have this box with its silver buttons, a red flashing light announcing that I'm behind the camera now. Thank you. So this is the video, if you didn't figure it out, which is why I asked them to display it here. But this was actually the very first video that I saw from the GoPro when I turned it on, because it was actually backwards. So I just had this video of fish in front of the GoPro and the sun about 50 feet up in the distance. So do you guys have questions? Yeah. Yes. Well, the short answer is read the book, because I'll explain it. But I'm Canadian, and I served a mission in France. I've served in the south of France. Actually, Nice was what we call, in French missionaries, you call it your Blueville, which is like your green city or whatever, where you're a greenie. They use blue as a word to describe, like, it was a military term for like the new recruits. And so French missionaries adopted that same tactic. We call it my Blueville. So I actually started my mission in Nice. And it's always been a place that I've returned to throughout my life. I was lucky enough to work over there several summers when I was an undergraduate. And then when I got married, my wife also spoke French, and we wanted to find a way to go back there regularly. And at first, when we were graduate students, that took the form of working for a study abroad program that was for high school students. So it was these privileged high school students, mostly from the coasts, who would come to France for a month, and they would take language classes, and we were there to make sure nothing went wrong. And there was always lots of things that went wrong. But we did that for about 9 summers. The last 2 summers, we had our first child with us. And after that, after we started having kids, we really wanted to find a way to raise them bilingually. And so this was a plan that took many years of thinking, talking, negotiating, to find a way to do it. When I had my first sabbatical as a professor, we had saved up enough money that we wanted to try and buy an apartment. We didn't think that we'd be able to afford anything in Nice, even though that's where we wanted to go. but we kind of lucked out last minute. My brother found cheap tickets that were like $100 or something. It was a mistake fare, and so I flew out and did this like rapid house hunting trip and found this place that was underpriced, that needed renovation, that was in the old Nice neighborhood, and we bought it. And during our first year there, we just put our kids in public school. I only speak French at home, so they'd already spoke French and learned French. My oldest was 8 at the time, and that was in 2014. So we've been doing it now for like 8 years, I guess. So my kids are older. They keep switching back and forth between French public school and Indiana public school. And but I mean, it's not too disruptive because we're always going back to the same place. So they kind of pick up with their friends and acquaintances, get back on their soccer teams, and reintegrate into society every 6 months. So it's a very different way of living. It sounds glamorous, I think, but it's a very complicated way to live with the family, but it's been very rewarding. And all of the challenges and the stress that can be associated with doing something like this, the financial strain, I think have been offset by the real tangible benefits that my kids just now are really starting to see. They're both entirely bilingual in both languages. And they've got an appreciation for culture that I think is really exceptional for kids their age. And because we have to do this on the cheap, they also don't put a lot of stock in stuff. Like, they're none of my kids have cell phones, even my daughter who's in high school. And they've never asked to have a cell phone. It's like they don't even see that as something they need. It's like, so, yeah, we just keep doing it. Any other questions? Yeah?
What was some of the challenges that you're looking at going from your short story writing to
Learning to write longer stuff. When you're writing an essay or a short story, there's a natural arc of action and a resolution, right? You have that Freytag's triangle, right, that you're probably all familiar with in your creative writing classes, where you have inciting incident, rise in action. And when you're writing a short story, it's easy to experiment with form and to play around with that shape in different ways. When you're writing something longer, you can't do that as easily. It's a lot bigger time investment. And then your chapters can't be like essays. One of the reasons why I read this one is because it's one of the only ones that really work by itself, right? A chapter has to build on previous chapters. And so the place that you're ending a lot of the times in a chapter is not in resolution. You're ending when something goes wrong, right? Or you're ending when there's a new question or a new challenge or something else happens. And so you have to change how you think about those little parts, not think about those little essays as kind of standalone things, but as something that are like building on each other and actually, not resolving, they're sometimes purposefully not resolving, right? And then you have some that resolve and give you a break, divided up into sections. This memoir is divided up into 3 sections, so that also has its kind of own energy and kind of rise in action over each of those 3 sections. It's a lot more complicated. You have to look for good models too, like find good models, find memoirs. One of the first things that I suggest to students, like right now I'm teaching writing for video games. My students love to hear me say this, but I'm like, if you want to write for video games, you need to play a lot of video games. And they're like, what? I just got told by my professor to play video games. But if you're wanting to write memoir, if you're wanting to write novels, like read widely in that genre and read contemporary work, right? Read contemporary work so that you're aware of the kinds of things that people are writing now. Good contemporary work is building off of the traditions of other work. You know, there's also an argument to be made for having read, you know, traditionally across the genre as well. But, you know, read good contemporary work, and that'll help. Yep.
What were some of the memoir quotes you inspired
This one? So Anthony Doerr's Four Seasons in Rome, I kind of actually stole his first chapter for this memoir, actually. Was helpful. It has the kind of year-long time frame that I also used for this memoir, which was helpful to me, thinking about, you know, time as well. Cheryl Strayed's Wild was helpful. I wanted something that would be kind of transformative the way that her narrative was, but transformative for a family rather than transformative for a young woman. Adam Gopnik's Paris to the Moon, I think, was helpful for thinking about France and ways to write about France that would be interesting to a predominantly American or North American audience. I mean, I read a whole bunch of memoirs. I read like memoir. I actually just ended up judging a contest last fall. There was a first book contest with a consortia of colleges in the Great Lakes area, and read probably like 30, you know, first memoirs for that one. That didn't influence this book, but it's like I've been really interested in the forum now for a while. But those are ones that are helpful for this one. Yeah.
Your first two books are collections of short fiction, and your two newest books are collections of essays or memoirs.
Yeah, actually I did one fiction, and one creative nonfiction, one fiction, one creative nonfiction. Yeah. So I alternated.
I guess the dates on that were not as wrong.
Okay.
But what made you decide to switch between those two genres?
So my background is in fiction writing, and I taught at a small liberal arts college, my first teaching job that needed me to teach creative nonfiction as well. So I actually taught creative nonfiction before I'd even taken a class in it, or even written any creative nonfiction, really. I mean, I'd probably written some essays and things here and there, but never anything serious. But that's where some of my friends, actually, who are distinguished faculty here at BYU, were very helpful to me in developing a syllabus for that class and learning the genre. But it was something that I came to fairly late, I guess, in my career. You know, I came to it as a professor, and just I really fell in love with the forum and some of the things that you can do with creative nonfiction. You know, memoir too was a new form for me. I think for me, I'm one of those writers that's trying to constantly sort of expand their toolkit of different things that I can do or different things that I can try. You know, my recent foray into like branching narratives and teaching video games, it's like stuff that I still feel I have imposter syndrome like big time all the time when I like do conferences and stuff, and I'm always like apologizing for not knowing enough, and they're like, no, you're okay. I'm the old guy, you know, who's like, I played Zork, you know. But yeah, I think it's important, you know, to expand what you know. I mean, whatever genre you choose to write in, you know, and you can do that expansion within the genre, or expand to other genres, or expand between genres and write stuff that's like purposely not one or the other, you know, and kind of like mess with people's minds. Good. John?
That cover could be the cover of Travel Time.
Yes.
And I wonder if the influence of travel narrative enters into that focus. Maybe less than the experience of memoir or whatever, but I wonder
Yeah.
what you have to say.
So I never liked this cover. I hope you guys like it though. I had arguments with my editor about it because of this exact thing, that I thought it was maybe misrepresenting its contents. You know, I do think it is influenced by travel. He wanted something that he's like, I want this to be that people see it and they think, you know, beautiful France. I want to go there. And so for him, the marketing concerns of a book like this were more important than my aesthetic concerns, I guess. I do feel, though, that it is somewhat misrepresenting its contents, since it is a memoir about place, and it is a memoir that's influenced by travel, and you do get some of like the linguistically idealized versions of the small, you know, village that you have here on the cover. But, you know, it's more about trying to live among others in a way that's respectful and with the family. It's really you know, it's about deliberately trying to live in the world, in a world with limited resources, in the way that's respectful to the community and to others. And that's, I don't know, there are travel memoirs that do that as well, right? And I think it's probably marketed more as a travel book, but I think sometimes people are not entirely sure what they're getting, or there might be a little bit of disconnect between what they think they're going to be reading. They want like a fluffy book about home renovation in France, and that's not what the book is. So there was another question before, and then, I don't know, there was one that I didn't ask earlier that raised their hand. The moment is gone. Okay, over here.
Hearing you describe your relationship with France, seems to be an interesting marriage between foreign and familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of your tips for writing about familiar experiences in a foreign way and foreign experiences in familiar ways?
Oh, do lots of research. You can write about anything in a way that can be compelling to a reader. I teach in the Midwest, and the Midwest has a huge inferiority complex when it comes to these kinds of questions. They're like, my students will be like, well, I just like grew up in like suburbs of Indianapolis. What do I have to write about? If you are the kind of person who pays attention to details and starts interrogating your experiences, you will find ways to write about that place that will marvel and astonish your reader. There are writers in the Midwest. Michael Martone is one. I think he might have come here recently. No, he didn't do this. In Salt Lake, okay. Who's from Indiana and writes extensively about Indiana. And the stuff that he writes about Indiana makes it seem like the craziest place in the world to live. Like it's, anyway, and a lot of it is because he makes all sorts of things up. He has this thing called the Blue Guide to Indiana that's like a fake guidebook. And people believe it, you know, it's right, like buy the guidebook and they think they're gonna go and find these like random, you know, places in Indiana that don't exist. You know, but I think, yeah, if you pay attention to details and interrogate your history, the things that have happened to you, you can find a way to defamiliarize the familiar, right? To make it seem new, to make it seem interesting. When you have a location like the south of France, one of the big challenges is this is a place that's been written about a ton, right? And that people have written about in really flattering terms. You know, it's this place that a lot of people want to go. One of the chapters in the book, I have this section where I talk about these memes that people would post about the south of France that I found. Some that would say like, how can you not? You know, and I would have this picture of this like beautiful seaside village that wasn't Cannes, you know, that would try and influence people to go there. So there's a lot of writing that's like that about the south of France. And so while there is some language, I think, that does talk about, you know, the pastel colors and the stone facades and all of these, I mean, I think really beautiful tableau of things that you see every day. I wanted to write something that was more about, like I write about my kids' soccer clubs. I write about the butcher. I write about like the fish that I find and the crap I find on the bottom of the sea. It's like the tourists aren't usually writing about that kind of stuff, right? And so even there, I'm trying to make, a place that might seem more exotic seem familiar. Any more questions? Braxton. This is my nephew, by the way. He's a BYU student. He's single, so. Yes.
So how has French, like what's your favorite thing about French culture and philosophy that also has influenced your writing?
Oh, good question. So my children right now bemoan the short time they have to eat lunch in the US. Every day we have to like make our kids lunches, right? And we like pack their lunches for the day. And every day they bring back their lunch boxes, and their lunch boxes are like, they're still half full. I'm like, how come you didn't eat your lunch? They're like, we only had 15 minutes. It's like they can't eat fast. We're used to 2 hours for lunch, and used to my kids being able to come home for lunch because the school is just right around the corner. You can walk to it in 2 minutes. There's a different pace of life there too, I think, which is a lot more in line with our core values. I coach soccer, which now has kind of become, with 4 kids who are in competitive soccer, it's become like another job. I'm coaching in the States, and I coach in France with a club there. And the club over there takes soccer very seriously. It's like, it's the national sport. It's what everybody plays. And it can feel very intense at times, but they don't have practices every day. When I come to the States, it's like you have this very compressed season where they have practices every day, and it's just like go, 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 go. They get out of school, they go to soccer practice, then they come back, then they have games. It's just like this constant just busyness. And, while it's busy also in France, you are in your soccer club for the whole year. You don't just have a season, and so your practices, you have games maybe once or twice a month. You have your practices, but it's just stretched out over a longer period of time, and less kind of go, go, go. And so that's really, I think, influenced, I don't know. I don't know if I take more time with my writing now. Maybe I do. But there's a lot of things about the values that have influenced. Food is, very central to our family. Family time. I just, had this conversation with my wife this last week. It's just like, we just feel like we never see our kids now. It's like they're just off to activities all the time. And whereas they're, that 2 hours at lunch every day where you're able to reconnect with your kids and talk about what they're doing, and then again reconnect in the evening, seems like a gift. We're done. Okay, no more questions. Thanks so much.